Naaman was a man who seemed to have it all. As a commander of the army of Aram, he was respected by his king and admired by his soldiers. Naaman's victories in battle had brought glory to his nation and security to his people. Yet, despite his wealth, power, and prestige, Naaman carried a secret burden. He was a leper. Leprosy, a dreaded skin disease, slowly robbed people of their health and dignity. For Naaman, it was a constant reminder that even the mighty could be vulnerable. Though he hid his pain beneath shining armor and a commanding presence, his soul cried out for healing. In those days, leprosy was more than a physical affliction, it was a social and emotional burden. Lepers were often shunned and forced to live on the outskirts of society. Though Naaman's position as a military commander shielded him from the worst of these consequences, he could not escape the quiet moments when the reality of his condition confronted him. At night, when the noise of the world faded, he would stare at his discolored skin and feel the weight of hopelessness settle over him. One day, in the midst of his suffering, a glimmer of hope arrived from an unexpected source. Among his household servants was a young girl from Israel, taken captive during one of Aram's raids. Though she could have harbored resentment, her heart was filled with compassion. She had witnessed the mighty commander's struggles and longed to help. One evening, as she prepared food for Naaman's wife, she hesitated, then spoke with a boldness that belied her youth. "If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." The words hung in the air, carrying a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Naaman's wife, desperate to help her husband, shared the girl's words. For the first time in what felt like forever, hope flickered in Naaman's heart. Could there truly be someone who could heal him? The idea seemed almost too good to be true, yet he could not ignore the possibility. Naaman's decision to seek help from the prophet Elisha required courage. To do so, he would need to humble himself before a foreign god and a prophet of a nation often viewed as weaker than his own. Yet, his desire for healing overcame his pride. With the king's blessing, Naaman prepared for the journey. He carried with him lavish gifts, 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. Surely, he thought, such treasures would be sufficient to secure his healing. He also carried a letter from the king of Aram to the king of Israel, which read, "With this letter I am sending my servant Naaman to you so that you may cure him of his leprosy." The journey to Israel was long and arduous. As the caravan of horses and chariots traveled through the rugged terrain, Naaman had plenty of time to reflect. Doubts began to creep in. What if this prophet could not help him? What if he had placed his hope in vain? When the king of Israel read the letter, he was distraught. "Am I God?" he exclaimed. "Can I kill and bring back to life? Why does this man send someone to me to be cured of his leprosy? See how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me." Naaman, standing in the royal court, felt his hope slipping away. But Elisha, the prophet of God, heard of the king's distress and sent him a message, "Have the man come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel." Naaman arrived at Elisha's house with his horses and chariots, a display of his importance and power. Yet, instead of coming out to greet him, Elisha sent a messenger with simple instructions. "Go, wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed." Naaman was furious. "I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the spot, and cure me of my leprosy," he exclaimed. "Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed?" He turned and stormed away in rage. For Naaman, the instructions felt like an insult. Was his dignity to be reduced to bathing in a foreign river? The Jordan was unimpressive compared to the mighty rivers of Damascus. His pride wrestled with his desire for healing. But Naaman's servants, seeing his despair, approached him with gentle words. "My father," they said, "if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more, then, when he tells you, 'Wash and be cleansed'?" Their words pierced Naaman's pride. Reluctantly, he went down to the Jordan River. The journey from Elisha's home to the river was marked by a heavy silence. Each step into the muddy water was a step of surrender, a letting go of his own expectations and a submission to God's way. Naaman dipped himself into the Jordan once, then twice, and then a third time. As he continued, the doubt in his heart began to fade, replaced by a flicker of faith. The cold water rushed over him, a tangible reminder of his vulnerability. On the seventh dip, he emerged from the water, and the impossible happened. His skin was restored, smooth and clean like that of a young boy. For a moment, Naaman stood in the water, overcome with emotion. He stared at his hands, now free of blemishes, and felt tears streaming down his face. The mighty warrior who had led countless battles now knelt in the river, humbled and healed by the power of a God he had not known. Naaman's heart overflowed with gratitude. He returned to Elisha's house, a changed man, both outwardly and inwardly. "Now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel," he declared. He offered Elisha the gifts he had brought, but the prophet refused, saying, "As surely as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will not accept a thing." Determined to honor the God who had healed him, Naaman made a request. "Please let me, your servant, be given as much earth as a pair of mules can carry, for your servant will never again make burnt offerings and sacrifices to any other god but the Lord." Elisha sent him away in peace, saying, "Go in peace." Naaman's story is more than a story of physical healing. It is a story of humility, faith, and transformation. It reminds us that God's ways are not always what we expect, but they are always what we need. Naaman had to let go of his pride, trust in God's instructions, and obey, even when it seemed foolish. How often do we resist God's direction because it doesn't align with our plans or expectations? Naaman's healing teaches us that true breakthroughs often come when we step out in faith and trust God's wisdom over our own. Moral lessons. 1. Humility precedes healing. Naaman's journey reminds us that pride can be a barrier to receiving God's blessings. Humility opens the door to transformation. 2. Faith in action. True faith is not passive. It requires action, even when the steps seem small or insignificant, like dipping in a muddy river. 3. God's ways are higher. We may not always understand God's methods, but His ways are perfect and lead to restoration and peace. 4. Compassion can spark change. The young servant girl's compassion and courage to speak up changed Naaman's life. Our small acts of kindness can have a profound impact. 5. Gratitude and commitment. Naaman's response to his healing was gratitude and a commitment to worship God alone. Let us also honor God with our lives when we experience His grace. Naaman's story encourages us to examine our own lives. Are there areas where pride, fear, or doubt are holding us back from experiencing God's best? Are we willing to trust and obey, even when the path seems uncertain? As you reflect on this story, consider how you can take small steps of faith in your own life. Perhaps it's reaching out to someone in need, letting go of resentment, or trusting God in a challenging situation. Whatever it may be, know that God is with you, ready to guide and restore you. If this story has touched your heart, share it with others and let's spread the hope and love of God. Together, we can inspire one another to walk in faith and live with gratitude.